I'm very pleased to share this talk that we had with Dr. Jean Clinton. She came and presented to a large group of parents and caregivers in the Ottawa area and talked about the importance of building connection with your children and your youth and your young adults, and had some really great message for us as parents. So I hope you all enjoy listening to her.
I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm glad to get in because I didn't even know. I was thinking, oh my gosh, Ottawa gets lots of snow. Has this been around all along? And the cab driver said, no, it was completely gone. We're all very annoyed. That's what you think. So I'm going to talk to you tonight about the power of connection, whether your child is 6 months, or 6, or 16, or 26. The power of connection and the relationships that you build with them can change how they experience the world, their world, and their contribution to the world. So I'd love to bring the teachings I've learned from people like Tom Porter and Diane Longboat, who are Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders, because as Michelle said in your introduction, Michelle, that if we follow the ways of our Indigenous people in terms of the teaching about connection and about community, you know, Tom taught me that in the Mohawk tradition, the child is seen as the sacred one, as a gift from the Creator. Now, as your 3-year-old is having a major temper tantrum in the grocery store and everybody's looking at you and you're thinking, they're frickin' judging me, remember that they are little precious ones. They are. Every behavior has a reason. But it's lovely because Tom taught me, also Tom Porter, that it takes the village, it takes all of us to raise those children well. And you know, we've got a funny kind of setup that we've got one set of parents or single parent who has the total responsibility of raising a child. And that is not how anthropologically we came to be. Before we were in hunter-gatherers, there was allo mothers. You know, somebody's crying and you're about to strangle them and you give them to some other mum who's going to help you take that breath that's going to get you through it. So it's so wonderful that Pleo brings you together as parents so that you can meet each other, possibly. You can share what you've experienced, which is the big thing that Pleo offers as people who have lived experience with children with mental health. So it is very much thinking through an Indigenous lens when we think about relationship and connection. So what you need to know is, as a child psychiatrist, as a mum of 5 kids and a nana to 9 who are 8 and under, I want you to picture Easter. How many eggs do you get to hide for the Easter egg hunt for 9 grandchildren? A lot. And you look to see where they're on sale. So, anyway, so the importance of the development of the whole child. And this is hugely important in our day because there has been a tendency to think that school readiness is being able to have your child learn to read and write. And this cognitive push is affecting children, certainly in the US and very certainly in Canada. Now, the problem is that the true measure of how well a child is going to do in school and beyond is not if they can read or write or even their IQ. It's how can they get along with others? Do they have empathy? Are they able to share their story? Are they able to share their toys? And in middle school children, are they able to navigate those relationships In adolescence, are they able to figure out what their passion is and who they want to be, their identity? And in young adulthood, you know, you thought you'd had them out of the nest and they're frickin' back in the basement. So we want to think about the whole child. Once a reporter called me and said, Jean, I'm reading this article, and kids in California, it says, who are 4 and 5, can read and write, but they cannot get along. And I said, oh, it's the tyranny of cognitive seduction. Isn't that a great term? I made it up on the spot. But I haven't heard anybody else quote it back yet. So we have to think about the whole child, all of development. And you see the medicine wheel here for the spiritual, the physical, the cognitive, the social, and building the balance in that. Now, I cannot say I could spend a whole day talking to you about the importance of belonging. We do not see belonging as a nice thing to have. We see belonging as absolutely essential. And, you know, for many children with mental health challenges, one of the things is the stigma of that, where, you know, it's improved. But, you know, that stigma, that feeling different, is really hard for children. It's really hard because in adolescence, which is from about 10 to 25, how many thought that they were finished with their children when they turned 20? And it goes on to 25, the brain is changing. Yeah, so really the power of belonging is so very, very important that we focus on. We need to find for our kids, no matter how old they are, we need to work with them to find that special person whose eyes light up beyond you. Whether it's a coach, whether it's a nana or an Uncle Larry. There's a fabulous book called Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett, where he talks about his Uncle Larry. He's now the head of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And he said that as he was growing up, he never felt that he fitted in. And it was only his Uncle Larry who was able to accept him for who he was and accept his homosexuality without judgment. So that sense of belonging is crucial. And then relationship. Relationships are the nutrients of the brain. When you build relationships with your children, when you have a rupture, and you know you're going to have that. We all have, and I'll tell you some of mine, my lovely explosive ruptures that I've had, particularly with my child, who I learned more about adolescence than I frickin' ever wanted to know. But rupture and repair is so hugely important that when you've built and you've got lots of donations, as it were, into that emotional piggy bank, when you have to take a withdrawal by setting a limit, by telling a child that their behavior just is not acceptable, that you love them, but you don't love the behavior, then if you've made lots of deposits in that emotional piggy bank, then it doesn't get tapped dry, which is so essential. So I want to acknowledge here that you guys as parents have had it really rough. Now, these are statistics from 2022 from an Ontario Parent Health Survey and from the Offord Centre at McMaster that I'm an associate of. And this was just post-COVID. Now, what do you think? Do you think parents' mental health has improved since COVID, or has it gone down since COVID? What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? No kidding. Especially these days, right? We're not going to talk about south of the border. But so it's huge, the pressure to parent, the worry about, is my child okay? Am I going to be able to pay the rent? really huge. And then relationships is central. 24% of parents have said that they've got high levels of conflict with their partner. But you know, it wasn't all bad. And I want you to think about the fact that some of the parents and some of the kids said we were able to spend more time together. Do you hear how that's relationship-based? That there were things that we learned about each other that we had never ever known. And so 41% reported they felt the more appreciation of things that were previously taken for granted. 45% reported an increase in availability to do activities with children. Now here's the thing. COVID was a unique situation. We were locked in at home, many of us, not all. And we were able to spend time with our children and our partners in ways that we never get to do. We got to see how tough it is to be an educator when we tried to do it ourselves. But you know, I can bet that that degree of closeness that some of you created during COVID is slowly slipping away. That when we are so busy, we don't make relationships, connection, belonging our priority. And I'm here to say that we need to think about, as parents, no matter how old our children are. You know, you think that they've fled the nest, as I said, but you know, I have 5 kids. They range from 40 to 30 now. It feels weird, very weird, that my children are 40 to 30. And I hate to say this for those of you who have preschoolers, it doesn't end. You know, our worry about our kids, you know, it never goes away. Our longing for them to have contented lives. You know, I don't necessarily, I'd like my children to be happy, but more than that, I want them to be content with the life that they have, and some glimpses of happiness a lot of the time. So we need to think about what's our North Star in parenting. There's another great book called The Carpenter and the Gardener by Alison Gopnik. And what Dr. Gopnik asks you to do is, as a parent, do you have an idea and spend more of your time trying to create the best kid that your kid can be? Get them in everything, make sure that they're obedient, and they're respectful, and they do this and they do that. So like a carpenter, you know what the end product is, and you're working towards it? Or are you more of a gardener? A gardener is someone who has a nurturing soil and liquid and so many conditions that you create for that plant, no matter what it is, to grow through their own capability, the plant's own nutrient seeking. Each child, I'm going to suggest to you, needs to be treated as if they are that special, precious plant, and you're creating the ecosystem around them where they can thrive. So what that means is we really, really, really need to think about, what do we think? What do we think about our children, our young people, our young adults? When we see and observe their behavior, what we think about that behavior, they're doing that on purpose, they're just like their dad. When are they ever going to learn? I failed as a parent. What you think affects how you feel. You have that kind of negative running in your head, how you feel is pretty crappy, right? And how do you act? Well, if you are a wonderful guru sitting contemplative, you reflect on that and you say, oh dear, What was it in my childhood that came up that brought me that reaction? Are you frickin' kidding? What we do is we react in the moment, right? Not all of us. The reality is that if we know what we think affects how we act, affects how we feel, what we think affects how we act, affects how we feel, and the other way around, then we can put a wedge in, a pause in. And in that pause between the action and your reaction, in that pause is where growth can happen. Where growth can happen. So as we're talking about growth, I'm a brain geek. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I love the brain. And why am I, as a child psychiatrist, talking about the brain? Well, it has everything to do with the fact that we have now learned that the brain can change. Your brain can change. Your little one, your adolescent, their brain is going through all kinds of change. And you know, when we think about early childhood, what we want to do is create that ecosystem where the little one is going to develop close relationships with you, then close relationships with peers. That's changing their brain. That's changing their brain as they are attaching and connecting. They're able then, also a big agenda for little ones as they're growing, is to experience, manage, and express a full range of emotions. And as you know, toddlers have a full range of emotions. You know, the toddler's creed: if I have it, it's mine. If I see it, it's mine. If you have it, it's mine. If I break it, it's yours. Right? But then they need to be able to explore the environment and learn. And all of this happens so importantly, particularly in the country that Canada is. So importantly that this occurs in the context of the family, the community, and the culture. So, what does that mean? And why am I talking about it as a shrink? Well, it's because all of those developments create changes in the brain. The brain is not what I learned in medical school. When I was in medical school when I finished in 1981, we had a sense that the brain was more of a fixed organ, that was kind of like a computer, and if you broke it, too bad. Well, now, that just is not the case. We know that the brain gets changed throughout life, even to your dying day. If you are learning, you are building connections in your brain. The connections are between cells called neurons. We've got 86 billion or trillion, I don't know, trillion, billion. But we used to think also that the brain was sculpted by your genes, that you were going to turn out pretty well like how your parents turned out. And you know, IQ is passed down, right? This is what we learned, IQ's passed down. And so the oldest gets the most, and the youngest gets the least. No, only kidding, only kidding. The middle gets the most, that's me. Anyway, neuroplasticity is the name of the game. And I'm so deeply involved in neuroplasticity, the brain's malleability, because man, oh man, the kids that I've seen over the years as a child psychiatrist, when they are able to have a solid connection, either one, luckily enough with me, but I've always spent my time with the context of the family. If I can help the family see things from the child's perspective, and the child feels even a glimmer of, they get it. It's not me who's bad. I'm not saying it's you that's bad, but they're able to make a change in their cognition. That is changing their brain. If they have a teacher, and I have story after story of kids, particularly in high school, where a teacher saved their life, including my youngest son, who had so much, he hated school. He had ADHD, and thankfully, he came across a teacher in grade 9 who loved Pink Floyd. And they used to have little competitions about who could punk who, about what year and what was on that album or not. You think that's trivial? That was the most important activity that happened in his entire grade 9 year. It kept him in school. It kept him going. So the human brain changes with experience, and it's our master organ. We've got 86 billion neurons in the brain, and how they develop is what you use. What you're exposed to, what you build, grows the brain. So when you have someone whose eyes light up for you, whether you are 6 or 36, that changes your biology, literally changes your biology. You know, one of the scientists I've read says that when your eyes light up, your pupils dilate, it increases the other person's heart rate, which releases all kinds of good stuff, endorphins, you know, all of this. It biologically changes your brain. Now, you might think, when my kid is having an outburst, at whatever age, I need to tell them what they should be doing instead, right? If the brain gets changed by experience, then I have to let them experience what I know to be right. Wrong. What we need to do is when a child, no matter, and a young person, no matter how old they are, this is from Dr. Bruce Perry, and he says that first you have to regulate. Regulate comes first. We must help the child or young person to regulate and calm their fight, flight, or freeze response. When a child is having a meltdown, when you're having a screaming match with your adolescent, what's happening in their brain, you may think they're doing it on purpose. But in fact, for many of those situations, they're be on guard, watch out. Something bad is going to happen here. I need to be super on it. First, you regulate. Then you can relate. Once you can relate, then finally you're able to reason. Now, what are some of the ways to do this? And these are things that Dan Siegel talked about for the 0 to 6 population. But you know, when I think about it with my 5 kids, these are pretty good things to think about. That are you as educators, if there's educators in the room, are you creating conditions that are safe? That are safe. So, there's different parenting styles. And if you are a parent who thinks that yelling at your kid, putting them in their place, putting them down is going to change them, you're absolutely right. It is going to change them. But how it's going to change them is because experience builds the brain, and the brain doesn't say, oh, this is good input, this is bad input, in it comes. Their brain is being changed to think there's something wrong with them, that your relationship is very negative. They don't feel safe. So they walk in the door, you ask them, how are you doing? They say, no, what's up? Nothing. They get a frame of mind that says, it's not safe here. I'm not accepted. I'm not seen here. So we want to be creating for our kids, no matter what age they are, that they're safe, they're seen, that they know how to soothe themselves. You know, we think about this in the little ones, you know, do they have a suki or do they have a blanket? But you know, our kids who are in elementary school also need to know what soothes them. Unfortunately, these days, for too many, it's not soothing them, but it is completely gobbling up their attention and their engagement in other things. So think about yourself. Do you know what soothes you? I'm not talking about sex and drugs and rock and roll, man, here, okay? But internally, what soothes you? What brings you that tranquility, that sense of, I'm okay right now, I'm good enough, I'm good enough? When you have these things, then your kids feel secure. And this is relevant for little kids so that they can go out and explore the world and learn, but also for big kids. So this is adolescence. So adolescence, as I said, is a time between about 10, when puberty is starting these days, to 25 to 28 years of age. You think it's over when they turn 20, it's not. The prefrontal cortex, the executive director, the stop, think, and plan area of the brain is still under construction until about 25 years of age. So you might think, well, you know, this outburst of adolescent bad behavior and other things is just new. It's new in this in the 2020s. Well, it's not. Listen to what this old fart said. Our youth now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for their elders and love chatter in the place of exercise. They no longer rise when its elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up their food, and tyrannize their teachers. So that's the 4th century BCE. So that means 2025, add another 400 years. That's when this guy was writing and talking. Well, talking anyway. So now Shakespeare also, he had it right. I would that there was no age between 16 and 3 and 20, or that youth would sleep out the rest, for theirs is nothing in the between but getting wenches with child, wronging the ancientry, stealing and fighting. And you know, the next line in that is, and they would go out, something about they go out in the middle of a storm. Well, you know what? If our young people back in the olden days hadn't gone out in the storm and figured out how to dam all of the water that was coming into the cave, we wouldn't be here. So there is some wonderful magic in adolescence. There's magic. So here's a picture. Question: why do they do the things that they do? So here's this young person who is thinking what? Are they thinking, oh my goodness, this is so dangerous, am I going to live? No. Do they know that it's dangerous? Yes. But what are they thinking? Oh, the thrill, man. The excitement of this. Oh, just imagine how those people on that tour boat are going to feel when they see me doing this swan dive off of this cliff into an unknown body of water. And there's a bunch of friends, no doubt, egging them on. How do I know this? This is my kid. This is my kid who, as I mentioned earlier, taught me more about the adolescent brain. So what we now know that we didn't know back when I was in medical school, we thought once, we knew that the early years, lots of stuff happens. But we didn't know that there are actual structural changes that happen after early childhood. And in fact, there's a huge burst of activity that happens in adolescence. So this picture here, the blue area is maturation of the brain. It starts at the back, moves to the front, but the last areas to develop are the areas that are responsible for planning, thinking, weighing things, good or bad. So when we think about adolescence now, what we know is that the brain matures by becoming specialized. And here's the thing. What a young person is busy doing, is building their brain. Now, I used to say, if they're out playing drums and piano and working on the stage for the drama, that's building their brains. If they're in the basement playing Grand Theft Auto or whatever the games are these days, that's building their brains. Now I say, if they're spending 7 hours a day on social media, that is absolutely building their brains too. So what we also know is the brain doesn't develop all at the same time. The emotional part of the brain builds and develops ahead of the stop, plan, think about it part of the brain. So here's a tale of two brains. The limbic system, the emotional system, which has the fight, flight, or fight in it, mostly developed. So that is an area of risk-taking, motivation, hunger, long-term memory, sensation-seeking. You see all these things. The prefrontal cortex, which develops into 25, doesn't fully mature. That's the area for decision-making and planning and working memory, prioritizing, all the things that you want your kid to have. They're under construction. They're not doing it on purpose. They're under construction. So here's some great, I love this slide, because what it talks about is what are the evolutionary advantages of these adolescent traits. So what you see is that the risk-taking drives them out of the parental nest and into the world. Sensation-seeking ignites a desire to explore the world of which they will become an integral part. And the list goes on, reward-seeking. So these are the evolutionary advantages of adolescence. I'm wondering, are our adolescents being able to explore and see these different evolutionary advantages? Because what's happening is their brains are being pruned and remodeled, the areas that are repeated over and over, they build. The ones that aren't used get snipped away. There's a principle in neuroscience that says use it or lose it. And also, the brain that fires together, wires together. So, the social brain. So you may think, why is my kid so obsessed with their friends? Well, they're so obsessed with their friends because they're kids. Their brains are biologically wired to want and need to be with their peers. Now, it doesn't mean that they love you less. That's a big lesson to learn. They don't love you less, but they love and want to be with their peers more than they want to be with you. Now, that was very true, 2007. That was very true 14 years ago. Now what is being seen, the sociologists are seeing, that young people are spending more time hanging around adults and fewer time hanging around other adolescents. Why? Because they're on their freaking screens all the time. We need to really think deeply about it, and I'll share a book with you. So I love this picture, if you can see it. There's a guy lying on the ground there, Michael Owens, a very famous soccer player. He's lying on the ground, and look at all the guys in red shirts. Like, they go like this. Like, did they take a class that said when your best player screws up a shot, you go like this? No, we're biologically wired to, as a species, react in this way. But check out the yellow shirts. You see them? They're going, yes. They are following their peer pressure as well. So peer power is huge. What else is huge in adolescence is the thrill, baby. The adolescent brain seeks novel stimuli. It shoots off, when you have novel stimuli, it shoots off dopamine, and the experience is rewarded by a dopamine burst. My son, as he did that dive, got such a rush when he did it that he did it again. I don't have a picture of that one. But compared to adults, adolescents have a really, really robust response. So, risk-taking then becomes what very often happens in adolescence. Now, risk-taking is hugely connected to the presence or absence of peers. So the leading cause of mortality in people aged 10 to 24 is accidents, mostly caused by risk-taking. But here is why some of the decisions are made. Avoiding social risk might matter more to adolescents than avoiding other types of risks. So I'm smoking because I'm avoiding the social risk of being centered out as not smoking. You understand that? Here's another thing. What emotion kids see? In this, adults say, I see fear. However, when kids are put in the scanner and shown these things, they don't say fear, they say angry. They say PO'd. And Dr. Deborah Yerkelin-Todd was so interested in this that she said, well, what's happening in their brain? And what she found was that the amygdala, the fight or flight area of the brain, was firing more when kids were seeing faces than they do in adulthood. There is a progression from feeling it to labeling it. It's a growth progression. So what happens, is this familiar to anybody? Teens are more likely to misinterpret facial expressions of emotion. They see anger when it isn't there. They process in that super fast fight or flight. So, see anger when it isn't there. Any of you have kids who have said to you, Mom, why are you yelling? And you want to say, you want to hear yelling? So the frontal lobes are responsible for all of this executive director stuff, governing emotions, judgment, and planning. So it's like the devil made me do it. There was a long time ago, there was a comedian who used to talk about the devil made me do it. And so there is this balance between that limbic system that says, do it now, and the one that says, think about it. Now, as if we haven't got enough going on in adolescence, we now have what happens about sleep. So what we know about adolescent sleep is that they need more sleep than adults do. But here's the thing, their sleep thirst gets changed. So they don't feel tired until 11, 12 o'clock at night. But then school is constructed so that they have to get up to catch a bus at 7 or 7:30. So we have kids who are chronically sleep deprived. So I hope that gives you a picture of what's happening in your teenager's brain. I bet you didn't have a sense of just how much is going on in there. And then the other thing is, there's more mental health issues that start in adolescence than at any other time. And people are curious about why that is. And one hypothesis is that it's when the brain is undergoing so much change, it has increased vulnerability. So more susceptible to something happening to it, to that brain. So then, you're not done yet. There's this thing called emerging adulthood. There was no such thing when I was learning about the brain as a medical student or as a resident. There was no such thing as emerging adulthood. What happened was you went through all of these things. You were an adolescent, and then you went on to adult roles. Well, guess what? It's changed. The transition from adolescence to adulthood continues to lengthen. So it used to be that the space between puberty and starting a family used to be, long time ago, used to be a couple of years. Now it is 10 to 28, 29, 30. So what are those kids doing in between? Well, are we allowing them or creating the conditions for them to thrive, to try new things, to have service learning, to volunteer? Or are we, as the psychologists tell us, hovering, helicoptering? How are we managing our adolescents? They take longer to establish their independence. So what I'm saying is it's not them, it's the psychologists who developed this new stage. I'm only joking. What it is society has changed. Society has changed. There isn't anything wrong with them. There isn't anything wrong with you. You haven't failed as a parent. You haven't done something wrong. So there's a great chapter on this. For those of you who are interested, you can take a picture of this on child development, a cultural approach. You have a chance to take some pictures. So, is the time between adolescence and adult roles has been changing because of the technology revolution, the sexual revolution, the women's movement, and the youth movement. There are a bunch of characteristics that I won't go into just now, but it is an age of identity and exploration, which used to happen in a brief period of time, and then the kids settle down. But as they tell us so often, life is no longer the same as it was when we were kids. So I want to finish with a couple of concepts. Remember, I said what we think affects how we feel, affects how we act. So what kind of parenting do you follow? I still love the work of Barbara Coloroso, who talked about authoritarian parents. They're the brick wall parents. They say, do it because I said so. They have a focus on obedience and punishment over discipline. Anybody have this as a familiar experience growing up? Yeah. How did it make you feel? Did you know you were loved? Did you hear it? Then there's the permissive parent, which is the, okay, don't put the cat in the microwave. Okay, honey. Okay, please, please. And the kids know that mom means no until we bugger long enough and dad says yes. Right? Permissive parenting leads to more anxiety because we need limitations and expectations. There's the uninvolved parent, and luckily I can say in my career I have seen very few uninvolved parents. But then the backbone family, as Barbara Coloroso talks about, is the authoritative family. That's the family that has flexibility, but range of motion is prescriptive. You've got flexibility, but you have be fair, be kind, be gentle. So think about what's your parenting style. Now, I can be honest and say sometimes, most of the time, my husband Jim and I strove to be backbone parents. But sometimes we slipped into, where do you slip? So I slipped into the authoritarian. Do it because I freaking said so. Never went into permissive, because I've always felt that what you say what you mean what you say, and do what you said you were going to do. If there was one magic wand I could share with parents, it would be the wand of consistency. If you're not going to follow through with it, then shut up already. Say what you mean what you say, and do what you said you were going to do. So let me finish by talking to you about 2 books that I've read recently that I think are terrific and worth you looking into. One is The Disengaged Teen, and this is two women. You can Google them and watch some great things on YouTube. But what they have been able to look at is that one of the big things that is a problem with kids doing well in school is lack of engagement. Anybody get that with their kids? Lack of engagement. You know, what we know when things are graphed out is after about, I hate to say it, but it's about grade 4. The lights slowly go out. For many, not all. And in high school, it goes out very, very sharply. But not only that, studies have shown that so many young people do not have a sense of purpose. So what's brilliant about this book is they break it down into 4 modes of learning. Is your child a resistor? So they are complaining, they're going along, but they're pushing back on you. Are they a passenger? Okay, yeah, I've done it, and they're not doing a freaking thing. Now here's the one that really surprised me. Are they an achiever? Are they an achiever? Now you'd think the achievers would be the ones who are doing the best. But guess what? They're not doing the best. Why? Because so often they're driven to be perfect. And if they're being driven to be perfect and they're not, they freak out. They develop anxiety because they're not perfect. And you as parents want to say to them, you don't have to be perfect all the time. And they say, what the hell do you know? Yes, I do. Instead, if you have a conversation that's more like, tell me what it's like. What does it feel like to have to be perfect? And when you feel that anxiety and that pressure, what do? Is there a way to change that? Can you think, and there are strategies around how can you address, name the emotion so that you can claim it, so that you can tame it. And so the world of CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, we're seeing has really terrific results for children, young people with anxiety. And a big part of it is being engaged. Now here's a scary book. I want to give you a scary book to look at. And it's called The Anxious Generation. It's written by a reporter, a great, I think he's a sociologist, but he's written a lot. So he has looked at what has happened to childhood. Since the introduction of the smartphone and the iPad, he correlates looking at numerous studies, and there is a pretty sound book from the scientific perspective, and he's plotted out where has technology come and where has anxiety gone. And there is a very scary correlation between technology, social media use, and the development of anxiety. So he's very clear in his book, it's really worth reading, that no smartphones before high school. No smartphones. You can get flip phones so that you can feel safe. The social media doesn't start until age 16. Australia's instituted this universally. Phone-free schools. Trying to do that. And then more free play. Older children, more responsibility in the world. He contends two things that really struck me. One, that we spend so much time as parents making sure our kids are physically safe, and we've spent so little time making sure that they're virtually safe. We haven't watched what they were doing. Any of you seen the mini-series, Adolescence? Anybody seen it? Yeah. Very important lessons in that one. So one, we've let kids go on without any kind of supervision or knowing what they're doing. The second thing is, we have replaced a play-based childhood with a phone-based childhood. Think about that. So, what's up? You say, take my kid's phone away? Are you kidding? But the thing is, if you have groups of parents, groups of friends of the kids who all say, this is what we're going to follow. The kids can't say, everybody else has them. So this is a time where we have to be much more authoritative and say, here's my backbone, but here's my limits. So what we want for kids is that they feel safe, that they feel significant, and that they feel situated. They feel safe, physically safe, socially safe, emotionally safe, all of these ways of feeling safe. This is from the work of my friend Stephen de Groot of Brivia. They need to feel, just as we need to feel, significant, feeling valued, that our contributions are valued and valuable, having a strong sense of connection to one or more aspects of the people or the business that they're in, of education, that's engagement, feel a sense of belonging, and there has to be a strong bond. When you are safe and you're significant, then you know what you're about. You're situated, you're clear about your purpose. So many kids, as I said, the purpose of their education is to get through it and get the marks, to get on and do more of the same. That you're clear on direction. Think about this as parents. That gold star, not that gold star, oh, that was Freudian. Freud said there are no mistakes. That North Star, not gold star, not stickers. So you've got this clarity of purpose, process, and payoffs. So it means, I hate to say it, put your own mask on first. You need to think about your well-being, because your well-being tremendously affects their well-being. When I'm speaking to educators, I say the educator creates the weather in the classroom. You create the weather at home. Now, I'm not in any way saying that parents are responsible for their children's mental health issues. Never in a million years. I have known my children to experience very, very significant mental health and addictions issues. It ain't our fault. We're doing the best we can with what we know. It's not our fault, but we can create that harbor for our kids where they feel that safe, secure, soothed, and seen. When you have that, then when there is a repair, as I said, that are absolutely going to happen, then you can make a difference. So lend them your calm. Ask them these questions. What do you need right now? What is most important? What are you hoping for? What's going well? And what helped you the most today? These compassionate coaching questions are used in many things, many different environments, but we can use them as parents. Because you know, what the kids are going to remember as they grow up and move on to adulthood themselves, they're not going to remember the tidy house or you're freaking out about this or that. What they're going to remember is how you made them feel. If we want to help our children, all of our children, what they need is us to be their best bet. They need to see our eyes light up. So I think we all need to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude. Every single morning for the next week, here's your, not assignment, your provocation. Because of the stats on homework. No, we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, so here is your provocation. For the next week, when you wake up, or some point in the day, think about 3 things that you're feeling grateful for. So you are feeling grateful for the snow outside because you're going to appreciate the spring so much more. Who knows? I love the robins are now back and waking me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Think of 3 things that you're grateful for because it changes your biology. When you have an attitude of gratitude, it opens your doors in your brain for more caring relationships and connections. And so I'm hoping that you will feel grateful for the precious ones that you have. I feel very grateful for the opportunity, Michelle, to be able to come here, endure the technology issues, and appreciate your attention, the respect that you're giving to me. I'm very grateful for. Okay, thank you very much. This is where you clap. Okay.